But if you do come home, then everything you went through over the last 4 or 5 years will be in vain.
Mm-hmm.
And you will never discover what you meant to be in America if you give up today.
Welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Remington Ramsey, and today we have Herve. Am I saying that right? Herve.
Yes, you did it right.
See, you said in the pre-show, you said close enough, and I just want to make sure that I really am close enough because people mess up my name all the time. People call me Ramsey. They think that's my first name because, anyway. So how do you say your name?
It's Herve.
Herve. Oh, see, I could have got closer.
Yeah.
And it's Kidiadi?
Yes, that's right.
All right, nailed it. So Herve is from Africa and originally came over here, and his story is phenomenal. When Bobby sent me the note on this, it just keeps going and deeper and deeper and deeper, and to the point where your story of success really has you starting in that valley of losing everything and starting fresh and starting over with other people who are counting on you. So I appreciate you taking the time to be on the show. Let's start with you being in Seattle. The first question I always forget to ask, but I'd like to ask is, what do you love about selling real estate in Seattle?
What I love the most about selling real estate in Seattle is like, especially for me being an immigrant, I don't really have a huge network of people that I know. So being in real estate actually helps me to build relationships. And now most of my closest friends, I met them through either selling real estate or working with them in real estate.
Yeah.
So so building relationships with people, that's my favorite part.
Have you converted to American football?
Until Americans start to call our sport football, I don't really think I would ever convert into American football. I mean, yeah, every time I hear somebody says soccer, that just pisses me off. That's why I don't even watch football in English. I watch in Spanish.
Because you don't want to hear it say soccer.
No, I don't want that.
What is your native tongue in Africa?
So our country, we speak. Generally, we speak French, like the national language. But then every city or every town, we have a different language. We have about 250 languages, if I'm not mistaken, in my country.
Yeah, that's just wild. That's a concept that I've got a couple friends from Africa, and I can't even fathom like going one village over and just being a completely different dialect, completely different language. Right. But that's so normal to you.
Yeah, it is normal. Like you can move from, let's say I'm in Washington State. Let's say I move from Washington to Oregon. It's gonna be like a different other country because the culture is pretty different. The language is different. They even maybe enjoy the different type of food.
Now, does that actually breed a lot of conflict because of that, because of the language barrier?
Yes and no. Yes, because people are always in competition, and some tribes, they think they're better than others, and there were a lot of tension going on. But for the most part, we all understand we are from the same country, that we have to basically love each other as brothers. Yeah, but the conflict,
you might have mastered that over some Americans, especially in this day and age.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, you didn't know the English language when you first came over, and share with us that story about your father sending you over with just over $1,000. Start from the beginning.
So I came from Africa. I have a pretty big family. I have 9 siblings, 3 brothers and 6 sisters, which is a pretty big family. So my life really started to shift, to have like a huge shift and movement after high school, because I'm from Africa, and like any African watching this would know, back home, we basically do whatever our parents want us to do, right? Mm-hmm. So as an African person, you basically follow your father's lead. So for me, after high school, it was I had to go to medical school. I was playing football back home. I played in college. I mean, in high school, I played in elementary school. I was also playing for a few teams. Back then, that was what I wanted to do originally, but my dad decided otherwise. He wanted me to become a doctor. So he really like saved a lot of money to send me to the best possible schools in the country for me to be basically directed into the best medical school after being out of high school, which happened. I went to the best medical school after high school, just for me to find out that I didn't really love it. I didn't really see myself working for 40 plus years, doing
Yeah.
something I didn't really feel like that was my calling. Yes, I was going to help people in the hospital if I made it, but what about me? What about my own happiness? What about me being really, truly honest with myself and following my purpose? Then I had to make the toughest decision of my life after the first year in medical school. Because my school was about 2 hours away from my
Mm.
hometown.
Were you living there or were you commuting every day?
Oh, I was living there. I was
Yeah.
basically renting. My dad was renting in a small house for me, which in return, I was also renting it to a couple other students. But my dad never
Nice.
knew about it. So my dad would send me,
Already this book.
yeah, my dad would send me the rent money, and then I would just charge my friends the rent money, and then I would just use my money for whatever.
Nice.
So that's how I started
Started
to
hustling.
make, yeah, I started hustling. And yeah, I was basically sleeping in the living room. In the house, my dad was paying for myself. So I was renting my room
Yeah.
to other guys. So I came home, that was 2011. And I had to sit my parents down and tell them, hey, I know all the sacrifice you guys made for me, and I know all the money you are still spending up until now for me, but I don't think I'm going back to that school. And then I saw my dad's face changing,
Yeah.
and then he became so angry, so irritated, and he just asked me why. I said, I don't. Number one, I don't love it, and number two, I am only having A+ grades just because I don't have anything else to do. I just wake up in the morning, I go to class, I come home, I open my books. That is the only reason. It's not because I am really dedicated to that or because I am very in love in that. No, I don't have any other option but to study. But personally, I am not really fulfilled inside. And I just feel like this is not for me. I want to pursue something else. That conversation went on from 5 p.m. to 2 in the morning. And I was
Wow.
going back and forth. And in an African culture, you don't do that to your parents.
Right.
When your dad is speaking, you shut up.
Yeah.
Right? That's the only thing you have to do. But for me now, I was like, I am 18. We never really came to a conclusion. He went into his room, slammed the door, and he
Mm-hmm.
never spoke to me again for 7 months after that.
So you're well in that moment, they don't know you're going to be the success that you've become now. I mean, in your first full year, I believe, for 18 months, 60 transactions. I always forget to say how far you've come since then so that people understand context, but you've become a massive success in real estate. And in this moment, they don't see that. They see our son has not
Yeah,
only dropped out of school, he's not going to become a doctor. And so you're seeking to leave Africa altogether. So you in my notes it says you're basically wanting your dad's blessing to move to, even though he's not speaking to you, you still wanted that blessing. How did you get ultimately to Canada?
right. I mean, so again, although I wanted to drop out of school, I wanted to do something else. Again, I'm from Africa, and in Africa, you want your dad to actually bless your moves, right?
Yeah.
I cannot do something without my dad's approval when I was back home. So although I wanted to leave and he wasn't talking to me, I couldn't I couldn't really do anything else. I couldn't move to my next step until he gave me the okay to do so. I was depressed. Like that was probably the darkest moment of my life. And I also understood where they were coming from because back home, 90% of the people are jobless, right? And my dad was coming from a place of security. He wanted security for me. For him, it
Sure.
was like, if you go through medical school, then you have your degree, chances are you are going to be among the 10% of the people who have jobs back home.
Yep.
And that's exactly what he was thinking. But for me, I was like, I'm 18. I can spend the next 10 years trying and failing. I will still be 28 and I will still have time to come back around and do something else. But I want to try out. I want to see what's out there.
Did you tell them? Did you tell them any fields or industries or ideas of what you did want to do, or was the entire conversation around just the fact that you didn't want to be a doctor?
The conversation was about I did not want to be a doctor, but also I did not want to live in Africa anymore. I told them the only place on earth that I can think of right now is North America. Because I was watching on TV one day, President Obama was saying America was the land of opportunity. And I was like, that is exactly where I want to be. But I did not want to come to the US. I wanted to go to Canada. Don't ask me why, because I don't know.
We don't have presence in Canada, so we can still kind of poke fun at them on this show.
So after that conversation, 7 months went by. My dad never spoke to me. If I come to a room, he's going to move to a different room. And then my mom, she saw how I was actually draining. She saw how difficult that was for me. And she was begging my dad. She begged my dad to let me leave the country. She begged my dad to just, okay, let him go.
Yeah.
One day my dad called me and said, hey, please come to my office. Then I took a taxi. I went to his office. And then he asked me, what do you want to do? I said, I want to go to North America. I want to go to Canada. He said, son, you are throwing your future away. I said, I love and respect you, Dad. But at this moment, I want you to either support me or to not support me. But either way, I am going to North America. Yeah. He looked at me. He never said anything for like 5-10 minutes. And then he went like, where do we start? I said, I don't know. But I promise you what, I figured this out. Then that was the biggest relief that I could possibly have. I went out of his office. Like I didn't have internet at my house. So we have what we call cyber cafe, right?
Yeah.
You go
cyber
to
cafe.
You go to a place, they have a bunch of computers with internet. I don't know how many hours I spent there. They had to kick me out because they had to close that day. And I was searching, how do you get a visa to go to Canada? And I was taking notes. And I found out how to start the process, what to do, who to talk to, where to go. Just to find out the next day, the Canada embassy in my country was actually closed because of the political conflict my country had with Canada. Yeah. And the only possibility for me to apply for a visa, I had to either go to Kenya or go to Tunisia, which would also cost a lot of money. Then I talked to my dad about it. He was like, okay, we spent all the money already in your school, but we have some leftover. Let's start with this. So we started with whatever he had in his savings. I tried a few times. I got denied the visa. Then he had no other money. Then he decided to sell one of his houses to keep on financing a dream that only I could see. Yeah. Nobody else could see that dream. Like my friends called me stupid. And then I saw my friends graduating from college and people were like, what are you doing? You are ruining your life. I was like, okay, if that's it, then let it be. But I need to see what's on the other side. Fast forward, I tried 14 times to get to Canada and I was denied a visa every single time. And that went on for 4 years.
How many times? You say 14 times?
14 times, yes. I started to even doubt myself. I was like, what if he was right? What if I did not drop out of school, right? I started to think of all of that. But then I remember my dad telling me when I was growing up, if you don't sacrifice for what you want in life, then what you want will definitely become the sacrifice. That is the one thing that actually kept me going. And then he also told me growing up, you build your life, whether you succeed or fail, the choice will always be up to you. So at that moment, I had to decide if I wanted to continue or if I had to go back to school. Then I decided, okay, at that point I was 20, 21. Okay, let me keep on going. Then one day, he had a friend over for dinner. I was watching TV and then they were eating there. And then at one point, his friend said, why is your son keep on trying to go to Canada? Why don't you try the US? Man, I turned off that TV, went over the dining table. I said, what did you say? How can I get there? Then we started talking, and then he gave us guidance on what we needed to do, or who we needed to talk to, and
Yeah.
all of that. 7 months after that conversation, I had a visa to go
Wow.
to come to the US. And the day the embassy called me to pick up my passport, it was on a Tuesday, April 29th, 2015. I went there, picked up my passport, I opened it up, and I had a visa to go to the US. I called my dad. I said, hey, got my visa. Could you please get me a plane ticket on your way home? I need to leave the country tomorrow. He was like, man, what are you talking about? You can let's wait a month. You need to say like bye to your friends. You need to. I said, no, no, no. I'm 21. You don't understand it. I spent 21 years here, and for
Yeah.
21 years I was with them. Now I'm leaving the country tomorrow. Got to America. My dad gave me $1,200. That was maybe whatever he had left over. Took it, came here. I had a family. I didn't know anyone. The only people I knew was a family friend that was living here in Seattle at the time. Got here, couldn't speak any English. I needed a job to get me going. Um, couldn't get anything because of my language. And the only job I could land at the time was a janitor position at a catering company at SeaTac Airport. And I was probably the happiest person on earth. I came from dropping out of school, not having a chance in life, to coming to America and having a job, getting paid for it.
Yeah.
I was so happy, and I was very proud of that job. But later on, doing that job in my company, I started to have people looking down upon me. Um, I faced a lot of discrimination at that job. Like in my department, at the time, it was the smallest department in the company, and I was the only black dude, and I was also the youngest one, right? And I was just the guy that cleans floors. And people didn't really respect me, didn't really value me. And I got to a point where I had to decide if I wanted to stay in that company or leave and find something else where I would be respected and valued. Then I was like, okay, if I leave, then I would give these people exactly what they are looking for, what they wanted. They wanted to kick me out. They wanted me to leave. And I am not going to give any man the satisfaction of breaking me.
Mm.
I'm going to stay here and I'm going to be the boss. This is my new goal. So I started to go to my job every single day, cleaning and sweeping floors, thinking of what can I do today to get me closer to becoming the boss. And I figured there were some disconnect in the job, in the company, in the department. 18 position, and every single person was only doing one job. And nobody could do two jobs, right? I was like, okay, this is the missing link. We have 18 positions, and if I could learn all these positions, then I would be the guy that nobody wants to get rid of. And one day, we had a big snowstorm, and I was working graveyard shift. I woke up that day at midnight to go to the job. I walked to the bus station, and the bus wasn't running. So I was like, dang, okay, I can go home, but if I go home, I'm only making $9 an hour. So if I miss today, I'm going to be missing $72. And $72 was huge to me at the time because making $9 an hour and working 30 to 35 hours a week, if you miss like $70, that's a huge chunk of money that I couldn't afford. So I decided, okay, I'm going to go to my job, but I'm going to go on foot because I had no car, the bus wasn't running. So I walked to my job that night, 1 hour and 30 or 40 minutes. Got to the locker room. My hands were frozen. Called my mom. I cried that day. Told my mom, yo, it's done. I'm coming home. And
coming home to Africa.
Yeah, like I
Well,
cried.
I'll tell you right now, being cold in the US, that's enough for me to want the weather in Africa alone. So I totally, so, but you're over it. You walked an hour and a half in the snow just to get to a job that paid you $72. And at that point you said, I'm done.
Yeah, I mean, my hands were frozen and it was hurting so bad. Got to the locker room, put my uniform on, and I just broke down. I was like, man, what am I doing? And at that moment, I started to have everything coming back to me. What if I became a doctor? I could be maybe now in the hospital doing something better. But now look at me. Call my mom. I said, yo, I'm coming home. And that day she said, you can come home if you want to. Your room is still here. It's still empty. Nobody has ever lived in your room. You will always be welcome here. But if you do come home, then everything you went through over the last 4 or 5 years will be in vain.
Mm-hmm.
And you will never discover what you meant to be in America if you give up today. The choice is yours. I clocked in, went to the department, and John was cursing. It was so, like, I never saw John that angry. Then I went into his office. I said, yo, what's going on? And he had 6 people call out sick. Like, out of the 18 people on the shift, only 12 showed up. Yep. And he had 6 people missing. And I said, okay, what's the plan? He had no fucking plan. And I said, okay, listen, this is what I could do. Let me try to cover for those people and see if we can go by. And they said, how could you do the job? You are only sweeping the floors. How could you do it? I said, John, you have 6 people missing, right? So you can either let me try to do it, or I'm going to go out there, sweep more floors, and go by my day. But either way, you screwed. Which one is it? Let me try.
Yeah.
He said, whatever. So I went out around 3 a.m., started to work those people's job, those positions. 6 people's position, and nobody was helping me. People were just watching me like I was a stupid guy in the department. And I worked from 3 a.m. to maybe 11 or 12 at night that day. Then I clocked out and I went home. The next day I came, John's boss, Jen, she came and she asked John the question, hey, you had 6 people missing yesterday. How did you manage to finish the day? And then he pointed at me, said, oh, that kid did it. And then she called, hey, kid, come on in. Then I came into the office and she started to ask me those questions. How did you manage to do those people's job? So she promoted me to becoming John's assistant that day. So I became the lead in the department. So I went in my job that day as a janitor and I walked out as a boss. And the next day, John had to have a shift briefing, letting everybody know I was the new boss. That was probably one of the best moments in my career. So I went from becoming the lead to running the entire company in less than 4 years. But in between 2019, I decided I had to leave Seattle. And the decision of me leaving Seattle came because I felt like I started to fail my dad, right? Me leaving Africa, I put my dad through all of the things I put him through, sold his house, used his savings. He had to maybe make the toughest decision he had to make, also going against his own will to basically let me do what I wanted to do, just for me to come to America to work for people 40 hours a week and doing all of that. I wasn't really pursuing something big and something meaningful. When I left home, I told my dad I was going to be an entrepreneur. That was the last thing I told him at the airport. I didn't know what industry, but I wanted to try something bigger. And I was coming home to my wife and I wasn't happy anymore at my job. Yes, I was getting paid a lot of money. I was a manager and bought a car, bought a house, got married, all of that. But I was failing my dad and came home. I told my wife one day, I'm 26 now. And if I don't pursue entrepreneurship now, I will never do it again, ever. Because the closer I'm getting to 30, the more I would want to be secure, the more I would chase security. So now it's my time to maybe fail, to try, to do something and see what's going to happen. And we we have to leave Seattle because Seattle was my comfort zone, right? I knew everything about Seattle. Everybody knew me in Seattle. And
Yeah. You're
I was,
established.
yeah, I was very comfortable now in Seattle. And the only way for me to get out of my comfort zone, I had to leave Seattle. Then I went on to my job the next day. I Googled what is the toughest place to live in the US? And then I saw an article and New York was #1 on the list. That's how I ended up in New York. I will still get a job here in New York, but at the same time, I am going to pursue entrepreneurship. I started by building e-commerce stores at the time with no experience, and I had no mentor. That was a huge mistake. I wasn't really making a lot of money, but I was now diving into my savings. I was spending way more money than I was making in New York. And after a couple of failed e-commerce um, stores, tried drop shipping, didn't work out. I tried to buy shoes in Europe and resell them here, didn't work out. 7, 8 months in, my savings were gone. I got to a point where I had to make a decision between paying my bills or actually financing my crazy dreams. And then I made a choice to finance my dreams. Fast forward, came back to Seattle, -28 in the bank, no car, no nothing. Called my boss up. I said, yo, I'm back in town. I need a job. He said, yeah, when can you start? I said, I can start tomorrow. Went back the next day. I filled up all the paperwork with HR. 2 weeks later, started got my job back. Then at the time, the company was maybe making 60 million a year in revenue. And my boss tasked me to get the company to over 100 million. I built up a squad team with a couple of guys. Our job was now to start going through the department, fixing all the issues. And once we've done that in Seattle, now the company wanted me to take my team around the country to start doing the same thing. Within 18 months, I took the company from 60 million in revenue to 118 million in revenue. But in the
What company is
process,
this?
Sky Chefs,
Okay.
yeah. And in the process of doing so, I had to spend a lot of time. I was basically living at my job. I will go to work when it's dark and I will come home when it's dark. And even when I'm home, I will still be on my phone, responding to emails, taking phone calls, and doing all of that. So that came from so that came with a price. That's when I decided I had to shift into something else, and I got into real estate.
Man. So all of that happened before getting into real estate. And what's funny is there's nothing funny about it. Like that was, I mean, it was an incredible tale of perseverance and starting quite literally from the bottom twice, starting from the bottom as a janitor to being the boss of the janitorial staff, and then starting from the bottom again once losing everything, trying to realize a 9 to 5 dream, and then getting back into the entrepreneurship role. And I've got a quote here, a couple quotes that, I mean, your father's been instrumental to you throughout
Big
this
time,
entire process.
big time.
You said most people have a plan B when they get into something. My dad would say that that is very irresponsible. To make a plan B work, you have to spend time thinking about it. You're giving energy to that, which makes it an excuse. If all my energy is in a plan A, that's my best chance. So the burn the boats mentality.
Definitely.
And then the last quote is, no one around me needs to understand what I need to be doing as long as they know I'll make it happen. And so again, that concept of your confidence outweighed their doubt. I think about that 9 hour conversation where you just felt so strongly that there was something better and bigger for you out there, to the point where your dad said, okay, well, then I'm going to finance it. And that's just a very emotional setting that you
Yeah.
described there. But since then, you took everything you learned. And what was your biggest year? Your biggest year was last year in real estate, right? What did you sell?
I started in 2022 in May, and last year was my first full year. I sold about 35 units and 16.3 million in production.
That's just bananas. We'll have to have you on again at another time to show exactly the rise of that. But today's story was that rags to riches story, and we just cannot be happier to have you on the show. Is
Oh,
there
thank you.
any other place we can find you on the socials,
Oh,
Instagram?
yeah, I am big on Instagram. You can just type I am Ark9, IMHARK9. That's my
Love it.
Instagram. And then I have links to other, yeah, to every other platform that I use.
We'll have that on our YouTube channel, which reminds me, if you are listening to this and you haven't seen our faces, you can check us out on YouTube. We are also on, obviously, Spotify and Apple. Herve Kidiadi, thank you for being on the show. We'll see you next time.
Thank you, my pleasure. See ya.